Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mangrove, and today we're going to be talking about Genesis 1, 6 through 8. This is the firmament. This is where God creates the firmament. The controversial firmament. What is it? Why did God create it? We're going to find that out. And let me read the verse first, and then we'll talk about it. Verse 6. Then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." That's verse 6. Verse 7 says, "Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven." Verse 8, "And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day." In Hebrew, they call the firmament rakia. And the definition of rakia in Hebrew is an expanse. That is what God called the firmament, an expanse. He called it heaven, but it's an expanse. And that's what the Hebrews defined it as. In dictionaries, it's a noun. And some of the definitions, I don't understand it, but it is what it is. This definition is the heavens or sky, especially when regarded as a tangible thing. Well, I agree with heavens because God called it a heaven. Sky depends on how you look at it. I mean, it can be, you can consider it part, I guess, the sky. And as a tangible thing, well, probably because it exists. You can't, I mean, it's tangible, right? Kind of. Other definitions are a sphere or a world viewed as a collection of people. Well, yeah, it's a sphere. It's round. So, it's a sphere. A world viewed as a collection of people. I have no clue what that means. I couldn't even begin to tell you what that means. Merriam-Webster says that the firmament is defined as a vault. V-A-U-L-T, a vault. Or an arch of the sky heavens. It is often described as a celestial arch or vault, separating the earthly domain from what lies beyond. So, what Merriam-Webster is describing in this definition that it has is not the firmament that it's describing. It's describing the atmosphere. The atmosphere was created when God divided the waters in verse 6. He split the waters in half and put half up in the air and left the other half on the ground, thus creating the firmament. So the part he put up in the air is the atmosphere. The atmosphere divides the earthly atmosphere from the cosmos atmosphere. Right? Okay. So where did they get vault from? Where did Merriam-Webster decide it was a vault? And one of the other problems with this is some of the other Bibles, like the NIV, they don't say the word firmament. They say vault. God created a vault. That's in the NIV, the New International Version of the Bible. It doesn't say firmament, which is why I use the New King James Version of the Bible when I read it, because it's the closest thing to the King James Version, which is probably the best version of the Bible is the King James, but it's a lot harder to read. The New King James Version, a little easier to understand. That's why I use that. So when I read Bible verses, it's from the New King James Version, just so you all know. But I could tell you this, it's not a vault. It doesn't keep anything in, but it does keep something out. The atmosphere. What does the atmosphere keep out? Dangerous parts of the sunlight, rays, radiation, sun particles. That's what it keeps out. It keeps out heat. Without the atmosphere, the earth would burn up. It would be very, very hot. Remember, God divided the waters, and he put the water above the firmament, in between the cosmos and the earth, what we live in. So why did he use water? If you're a diver, or you've ever seen a movie or a video or a documentary about diving in the ocean, the deeper you go, the darker it gets. The deeper you go, the darker and colder the water gets because of lack of sunlight. Water filters out sunlight. And that's why he put water up in the sky, to filter out the sunlight, to keep the water at temperature. To keep the earth at a temperature, so it doesn't burn up, so we don't get all the harmful rays that the sun produces. God forbid the atmosphere goes away, right? When you read the scripture, to me it seems pretty simple, right? I don't know why people put so much into this, but let me tell you some other definitions that are actually in the Bible, in the King James Version of the Bible, the New King James Version of the Bible. The firmament is talked about a lot. There's several verses in the Bible that talk about the firmament. And for some reason, it uses different vocabulary, but it all means the same thing. It is mentioned 5 times as being spread out. Once as stretched out. Once as a beaten work, like metallurgy. When you heat up a piece of metal and you hit it with a hammer and you flatten it out, what are you doing? You're stretching it out, right? It's expanding. And then you fold it and beat it some more and it stretches out and it's expanding. And twice is being stomped on or stamped. Now, if you take a soft, pliable object and you put it on the ground and you stomp on it, what's going to happen? It's going to flatten out, and it's going to what? It's going to spread out. It's going to expand. So you have all these spread out, stretched out, stomped on, expanded. You have all these meanings that all mean the same thing. It got bigger, is what it means. It got bigger, way bigger. And last but not least, God actually gave it a definition. He called it heaven. This is the singular heaven of the 3 heavens that we talked about in the last video. Now, he called it heaven, right? Now, when you think of heaven, do you think of a little small place, or you think of a giant, vast complex? Huge, giant, vast complex. That's how I view heaven. Heaven would be an expanse. That's what heaven would be. And he calls this firmament, he calls it heaven. In other verses, the Bible talks about the expanse. In Genesis 1:20, this is where God creates the birds. And when he creates the birds are to fly above the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God creates birds and he commands them to fly in the firmament. In Genesis 1:14, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens." plural heavens. This is where God creates the sun, the moon, and the stars, and he puts them in the firmament of the heavens, in the cosmos. Verse 6 says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. The word midst is the key word there, right? You would think. What is God trying to tell you when he says that? If a novelist was writing a book, a story, and he wanted to depict a big, empty, vast field surrounded by trees, how's he going to word it? Chances are he's going to say that there was a big, empty field in the midst of the trees, which means in the middle of the trees. That's the picture. That's what the author is trying to portray to you. Well, this is what God is trying to portray to you when he says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. He's giving you the mental picture of what the firmament is. It's in between the waters. It's surrounded by water. The trees surround the field, and the water surrounds the firmament. Okay. Now, verse 6. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let the waters divide the waters from the waters. What did God do there? God spoke the firmament into existence. Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. God spoke the firmament into existence in verse 6. Now verse 7 has two parts. It's one verse, but it has two parts. And the parts are different timelines. What? Yeah. The parts are different timelines. Verse 7 starts with, thus God made the firmament. So the firmament has already been made. Thus God made the firmament. Here's my pen, right? Thus Mangrove dropped the pen. I've already dropped the pen. Thus God made the firmament. The firmament was made in verse 6. The other half of verse 7 starts with the word and after the comma. And this is past tense. God is speaking to you past tense. And divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. That is past tense. Let me explain it to you. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. God creates the firmament right there. He spoke the firmament into existence. Thus God made the firmament. God is telling you in this verse that he made the firmament. In verse 6, he created it. And in verse 7, the beginning of verse 7, he's letting you know he created it. He's being pretty specific. And then the second half of verse 7, he's telling you how he created it. So I created it. I'm telling you I created it. And then I'm telling you how I created it. And then he tells you what he calls it in verse 8. And God called the firmament heaven. And then that's it. And then the evening and the morning were the second day. All he created on the second day was a firmament. It took him all day to create the firmament. Why? Because the firmament is so big, so vast. It is an expanse that we can't comprehend as human beings how big it is. Why did he make it so big? Why does the firmament have to be that big? What's going on? Well, God is creating things, right? He's creating birds. He's creating trees. He's creating man. He created the sun, the moon, the heavens, the galaxy, the stars. He has to have a place to put all this stuff, right? Think about it. He has to have a place to put all this stuff. Let me give you a weird analogy of what I'm talking about. If you're moving from one house to another house and you're packing up all your stuff, you're going to get a box and you're going to mark it kitchen. And you're going to take all your kitchen supplies, your forks, your knives, your spoons, plates, dishes, cups, Tupperware. Whatever you have that goes in your kitchen is going to go in that box, correct? And you're going to mark the box kitchen. So when you get to the spot to your new house, you put that box in the kitchen and you unload it. This is God's box, the firmament. He created all this stuff, and he had to have a place to put it. So he created the firmament, and he put everything inside of it. Now, is there an end to the firmament, like there's an end to a box? Most likely. We will never see it. And God most likely lives outside that, in his heaven, in the third heaven. Because remember, what we have is we have the firmament between the waters, what we live in, what the birds fly in. That's the first heaven. The cosmos, where God put the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the galaxies, the cosmos, that's the second heaven, where God lives is the third heaven. Remember, in the other video we talked about that? So, what is the firmament? The firmament is a space, a giant, massive, God took all day to make space where he put the firmament, where he puts everything inside, including the atmosphere. The atmosphere is in the firmament. The atmosphere is not the firmament. It's in the firmament. So God creates this giant space to put everything inside. And where all these people are coming up with these definitions, a group of people, a vault, a whatever. It's just, the Hebrews called it rakia, which means expanse. God calls it heaven. And God divided the waters from the waters and created the firmament. He put the firmament in the midst of the waters. The firmament is in the middle of the waters. It's the space in the middle of the waters. So the definition of firmament is a space. A vast, giant, massive space. I don't know how what else to say. I don't know how else that I can convey this point. But when you read 6, 7, and you read it, and you read it, and you read it, it tells you what it is. God tells you what it is. It's not complicated. I don't know why people make this so complicated. Anyway, you get lost in thoughts sometimes, man, because it's a wonder. It's a wonder. Anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Like, share, and subscribe if you want to. Make a comment. Give me some feedback. Tell me what you think. Am I wrong? I could be. I'm only human. I do make mistakes. So let me know if I made one in the comment section. And have a blessed day. Bye.